Lost Art with Andrew Cox, retired Master Gunnery Sergeant. thelostart.podbean.com. Get some merchandise and help support the podcast in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Now on all major podcast platforms. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be a guest, tell your veteran story, discuss your veteran business or organization. Email The Lost Art with Andrew Cox at gmail.com. Andrew Cox, a Till Valhalla Project Ambassador. See the project story at tillvalhallaproject.com. Thanks for tuning in. Please enjoy the podcast that's giving a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox.
Today's episode is brought to you by TrumpShirt.com. TrumpShirt.com is a veteran-owned business where 100% of the proceeds goes to disabled veterans and veteran organizations. Support your veterans by purchasing a shirt at TrumpShirt.com. Use the promo code TLA and get free shipping. That's TrumpShirt.com, promo code TLA.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast. That podcast is giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we'll be having a My Veteran Story. But before we get into the episode or you enjoying the podcast, go to our website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Go check us out, see what we got going on. Don't forget there's a merchandise tab in there. Go click on that, get your cool hat, shirt, something like that. Help support us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Also, I want to give a shout out to the Till Valhalla Project and allowing me to be an ambassador for their amazing organization. If you haven't checked them out, please do so. tillvalhallaproject.com. Go check them out, see what they got going on, and see what you can do to help them out in their mission. All right, with that, I got Brandon over here. Brandon, how you doing?
Living the dream, man. Another day above ground.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So Brandon here is works here at Grunt Style, correct? Yeah. And tell me again what your title is.
So I am the social media and outreach team lead here at Grunt Style. I've been here for about 3 years. And we're actually in Grunt Style HQ right now. We're shooting.
That's right.
We're in San Antonio.
It is crazy. Yeah, I got a tour of the facility yesterday. It was fantastic. It is awesome what you guys do. The murals, what you have up to remind yourselves what you're here or why you're here every single day is incredible.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for what you do. You know,
thanks for coming down. Thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited. And
yeah,
can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, man, it'll be good. Well, let's start at the beginning for you. So let's go back to where you grew up,
okay,
and then kind of talk us through how you got into military service.
So I grew up in a little dumpster hole, Lancaster, California, in Southern California, right outside Edwards Air Force Base, about an hour north of LA. I grew up there, went to high school there, and I'm the oldest of four, so I've got two younger brothers and a younger sister, and my dad's a teacher, my mom is a cafeteria manager. So growing up, there wasn't a lot of money, and there were a lot of people that needed it. So going through high school, I was the oldest. I was always getting in trouble. I was the experiment, I like to say. So, I was going through high school. I did Air Force Junior ROTC because I always knew I wanted to join the military. I grew up playing Army in the backyard with my brothers and sister. And I always knew I wanted to join the military. And I always knew I wanted to do something more with my life. I didn't want to just check a box for the rest of my life. I wanted to give back.
Right. Yeah.
And so doing Air Force Junior ROTC really set the stage for that. I knew I wanted to join the military. And then my junior, senior year, 9/11 happened when I was in 7th grade.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
And I remember being in 7th grade, and I went to the recruiter's office, and I'm like, how old do I got to be, man? Put me in, coach. Put me in. Point me at the bad guys and let me go. And they're like, hey, bro,
I appreciate the enthusiasm.
Yeah, they're like, get out of diapers first and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
So junior, senior year of high school, I already knew military. So I went and I went to all the different recruiters. I talked to every single Navy, Marines, Air Force, Army, and they all gave me, their spiel.
Right.
And it's 2006, 2007 when I started talking to these guys. So war in Iraq and Afghanistan is on full blast.
Right.
The surge is getting ready to happen. And my senior year rolls around and I decide hey, Army.
Okay.
And my recruiter's like, great, you got to stop fucking up. And I'm like, message received.
You got to walk the straight and narrow in order to get the rest of the way in.
Yeah. And so I talked with my parents and I'm like, hey, this is what I want to do. And they're like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to go infantry.
Yeah.
And my whole family was just heartbroken. They're like, "You're gonna die, dude!" Like they're just watching the news, and
Oh yeah.
everybody was really upset. They're like, "No, go work with computers, do something else." I'm like, "No, I want to go infantry."
Yeah.
So I pulled myself out of regular classes and I went on home study.
Oh, okay.
Because I knew that I was getting in trouble and I needed to take that element out.
Right.
And I actually ended up graduating early, got my diploma, walked, and then 17 days after I walked across the stage, I was in Fort Benning, Georgia.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I had it set
turnaround.
up. I had it set up. I was ready, man. And yeah, that was it. You know.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to serve.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
in now, of course, your family nervous about it, right?
Yeah.
Walking in, but that didn't discourage you at all. You're like 100%. This is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, you know, I sat down and talked with my recruiters, and one of my recruiters was an infantry guy, 101st Airborne, and then the other one, I think it was like an MP. And we talked over all the jobs, and they're like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to do something cool. I want to blow shit up and kill people." You know?
Yeah.
And so they're like, "Well, you know, infantry is probably the way to go." But I looked at everything, and I took my time and I really put thought and stuff into it. And I was like, if I'm joining the military, I want to do something I can't do in this sector.
Yeah, and that is definitely one.
Any of these other jobs, you can kind of do those. There's some kind of civilian equipment, right?
Yeah.
And so I knew I wanted to do something I couldn't do anyway. Right? And there's also that pride thing. There's a little bit of ego there. I'm an 18-year-old kid. I'm full of testosterone, and I want to, like, hey, point me at the bad guys and let me go.
Yeah.
And so that's how it got started.
Very nice. So grew up in California, go to Fort Benning, you said?
Yep, Fort Benning, Georgia.
So and had you done much travel before then?
Not really.
Okay.
Like family vacations.
Okay. That was pretty much the big travel. Okay. So what was it like then for you traveling from California, going to Fort Benning? And of course, you know, your first probably week or so of boot camp is always a little stressful.
It was miserable.
Yeah.
And it was stressful. And I remember getting there and the first week I'm like, made a mistake. And I remember trying to sweet talk my drill sergeant. I'm like, hey, this ain't for me, man. I screwed up. Let me go. No hard feelings, right? And no, man, you got to suck it up and go through it. And I actually went through the buddy program.
Okay.
With one of my friends from high school, and he didn't make it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hey, this isn't for me. He totally tapped out.
Yeah.
And so it was just me kind of flying solo after that. And it's a culture shock, man. You get into basic training, you're around all these different people and in a stressful environment and stressful situations. And it was not great.
Yeah. It's always, especially, you know, the younger you are, you're not used to, you know, as much adversity and those types of things. And then all of a sudden you're there, you got these guys screaming at you, you're doing things outside of your element. Yeah, it's tough, man. I definitely can see that. Now as in the boot camp, what are some of the things that you personally remember that stick out for you?
Oh man, stress. It was stressful, but you get into a routine. And once you understand the game, kind of.
Right. Yeah.
It's a game. It's a game.
Yeah.
It's a game. You have to play the game, play your role.
Yeah.
But halfway through basic training, I got horribly sick. I got pneumonia so bad. They like sent me to a hospital. And I was in the hospital in Fort Benning. And you want to talk about adversity and like the mind game. I finish in the hospital. I was in there for like 10 days. I go back to my unit and they're like, hey, you missed too much training.
You got to go. Yeah. You got to go back.
You got to go back.
Yeah.
And they're like, the only unit that is in training right now is a day one. So I had to go back to day one of basic training.
What?
Yeah.
So how long had you been there already?
I'd been there a month and a half, maybe a month.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, you know, you go in, you're there, you understand it, you're used to the dynamic, and then it's day one restart.
Oh, my God.
But I go back and I've already been through a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And so I immediately kind of slide into a leadership role in this platoon that I'm in. And everybody looks at me like I'm a superhero.
Right.
Because I've already done all this stuff. And so it was kind of like I was skating a little bit through basic training because I had already done all this stuff. I'd already qualled, like done grenades, all this stuff. So my drill sergeants were pretty much like, hey, man, you're in charge of the platoon.
Yeah.
And when we go out to the range and stuff, like I would just help the drill sergeants set up the range, like do stuff, coach guys through. And
I mean, that was kind of your first real dose of leadership in the military.
Yeah,
that's really
and
cool.
so once I got past the mind, kind of like the mind fuck of it,
right? Yeah,
I was like, hey, this is a great opportunity.
Yeah,
I can show what I'm made of, and I can show some go get 'em spirit,
mm-hmm.
and that's exactly what I did.
Yeah,
and so then it was easy.
Yeah. Now getting through the rest of boot camp, I'm sure not a problem at all.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't tough. You settle into a schedule,
right?
And it's every day. You know exactly what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
I get up, shower, shave, make my bed, and then I do. It is basic training is the easiest thing in the world because
absolutely.
You do exactly what you're told.
Yeah.
You do not think. You do not. There is a certain set of parameters, and you do not do anything outside of those parameters.
Yeah. And as long as you do that, you're good.
You're good.
Yeah.
So once you understand the game and you understand the process, it's easy, man.
Yeah. Wow. So you get to the end of your boot camp part. Now you were in the Army. You trained with all infantry, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys rolled right into infantry MOSs.
Yeah, it's all right there. You never leave.
Right.
So the only way you finished basic training, and are now in your AIT school, is we got like a 36-hour pass.
Oh, are you serious?
So they give you a 36-hour pass. You go out into the little city outside of Fort Benning, and they're like, hey, you can't go more than 25 miles. These are the places you're not allowed to go. You can't drink. So me and a buddy split a hotel room.
Yeah.
We went to the mall and walked around the mall. And of course, all the drill sergeants know you're out there. So they're cruising.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember running in my drill sergeant home.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's checking on us.
He's checking. And then you roll right into your infantry training, which is really just more of the same thing.
Okay.
So easy peasy, man.
Yeah. And then now, what specifics were you doing in the infantry? Were you a rifleman? What were you?
I was just like a regular rifleman.
Okay.
Once you get to your unit, they kind of assign you different roles.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But inside of basic training in the Army, they call it OSA, one station unit training.
Yeah.
You're just learning everything. Your battle drills, you're learning how to shoot, you're learning how to like enter a building, clear a room, grenades, like all that stuff.
Yeah. All the different weapon systems.
All the different weapon systems, Like, it's at least a familiarization with all of the stuff. And so that was all we did. It was all we did. A lot of rucking.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of rucking. In Fort Benning.
How much, Fort Benning in the heat. Yeah. Always fun. How much on your pack?
Like 65 pounds, 65 plus you had your kit and your plates and all that stuff. So, man,
so
I remember
you were getting used to it.
We were getting used to it, and I remember being there. We had a 12-mile road march that we had to complete. It was like one of your checkbox things,
right?
And we get out, and we're like 6 miles in. It's raining the whole time. I didn't know at the time because we didn't have TV. Georgia was getting hit by a hurricane.
Oh, are you serious?
So finally, we're like 6 miles in. They're like, hey, trans can't come pick us up, so we have to turn around and walk back.
Yeah.
But the road was flooded, so it ended up turning into 8 miles back instead of 6 miles back.
Wow.
And so we get back, and I'm sitting in the barracks, hanging all my clothes up to dry because I'm soaked.
Yeah.
And I'm just watching like trees fall over in the parking lot, and I'm like, oh,
wow,
great.
And they didn't tell you any of that.
And I grew up in the desert in Southern California. So I'm like, a hurricane, what's that?
Yeah, exactly.
What are these things falling out of the sky that's wet?
Yeah. You didn't get a lot of that there.
Didn't get a lot of that in Southern California, high desert.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wild. All right, so you finish up your training, and then where do you get your assignment?
So, they're like, hey, where are your top 3? And I'm like, Germany, Hawaii, Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay.
So I had family in Tacoma, and I was like, it'd be cool. I'm still young, and at this point now, I'm like, okay, I know nothing.
Right.
So if I can have a little bit of a support system, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I ended up getting Fort Lewis.
Okay.
And I go home for a month. I had like 2 weeks of leave, and then I did 2 weeks of recruiting where I worked in the recruiting office and at schools and stuff. So I went back home for a month, packed all my stuff up, bought a car, did all the stuff that they tell you exactly not to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, don't marry the strippers, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
I pretty much did all of it.
You had to ensure that what they were telling you was accurate.
Yeah.
So you had to actually get involved.
Yeah. You got to try.
Yeah.
And then my dad and I'll never forget, it was like the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
Load my car up and we drive from Lancaster to Tacoma.
Wow.
It took like 2 days, made a road trip out of it.
Very cool.
And we get up there, we check into the hotel on base because I still have a couple days to leave. And, his brother lived up there. And so I had cousins and stuff. And, we went and hung out with them and saw Washington is beautiful.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Washington is one of the most beautiful states in the country.
Yeah.
And it was a culture shock for me, too, because it's like cold. It rains all the time. It's snowing. I'm like, man,
what is this?
What is this? But it was great. And then, my dad left, flew back home, and now I'm kind of alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't checked into my unit yet. I've got like tape. I'm just like sitting.
Like, what do I
What do I do now? I'm an adult and I'm by myself.
How do I do this?
How do I do this?
Yeah. That adulting thing is challenging at times.
It's challenging. Being a young soldier and you finally have a little bit of money saved up. And, you're in this gorgeous area with all this outdoor stuff and all this trouble to get into. And I'm like, I could really blow it right now.
Yeah.
But then I check into my unit, move into the barracks there, and it's a whole process. They had me moving from the hotel into these temporary barracks while I in process in Fort Lewis. And then I go to my unit and I have to move out of the temporary barracks unit.
Right.
These were old school barracks. It was 4 guys to a room, bay showers, bay bathrooms, and one common area day room with like a little kitchenette in it. And it was a shock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good living right there.
It's great living.
Yeah.
You want to get close to the guys you're serving with.
Oh, absolutely.
Sleep 4 to a room and share showers with them, man.
You get pretty close.
You get real close.
Whether you want to or not. Yeah. So at this point in time, like, what's your rank?
I'm a PFC.
PFC. Okay.
Yeah. So, because I did ROTC, they gave me a couple promotions.
Gotcha.
Go in there and do all that. So I'm a PFC, but, still, I know nothing about the Army. And my unit that I get assigned to is just coming back.
Oh, wow.
So they were there in 2007. They're just coming back, like literally just kind of coming back in from their leave after deployment.
I see.
And so they were there for, the Battle of Fallujah
and
all of this crazy stuff that was going on in 2006, 2007 in Iraq. So these are a bunch of salty combat veterans.
Yeah.
And I am a brand new, know nothing idiot.
Yeah. And that's a daunting thing, checking into a unit that has been deployed there, that, it's probably more than half of them deployed more than once at this point. So, as you're checking in, you're like, I know nothing. These guys are going to eat me alive. That I'm sure all those types of things.
Yeah. And you might not have figured it out yet, but I'm a little bit of a smart ass.
Now.
Yeah. And I like to talk. And so I'm constantly just telling myself, shut up. Shut up. Don't even talk. Don't do anything.
The constant battle with yourself.
Yeah. So it was tough, man.
Yeah.
Because you're right. They'll eat you alive. And, a lot of times guys come out of basic training. They're like, oh, man, I'm the last line of defense against communism and stuff. And you know nothing. You've done nothing.
Absolutely.
Keep your mouth shut.
So as you're getting you're checked in, right, and the units all coming back from leave, and at this point, I imagine they probably know that in the near future, there's probably going to be another deployment. Yeah,
we don't know when, we don't know where, but I was with the 2nd Infantry Division at Joint Base Lewis McChord, 3rd Brigade, 2nd Battalion, 3rd Infantry Regiment. So we knew, like, hey, the war is still on the table. Like, it's not. So we knew that there's another deployment coming up. So they come back, they're kind of getting back into the swing of things, and it's right back into training, man. And you've got all these new Joes coming in to replace guys because guys are PCSing, they're getting out, they're retiring, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just right back into the grind,
Yeah, and it basically pre-deployment preps and getting ready because you just have So.
Yeah. And at this point, the unit I was with was a striker battalion.
Oh, very cool.
So strikers are still relatively new-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And so, they're getting new trucks in. We're learning about the trucks. We're learning about first year weapons. We're learning small unit tactics, like everything that goes into being kind of like a mechanized mobile infantry brigade.
Yeah. And how many strikers did you guys have?
So every platoon had 4 strikers, one for every infantry squad.
Okay.
So, you had your 3 regular infantry vehicles, and then you'd have a weapons infantry vehicle, and every platoon also had every company had a medical striker.
Yeah.
So we'd have one of the MEV ones, and then every platoon had 4.
Wow.
So it's a lot of vehicles.
Yeah,
for like a company to maintain.
Yeah. And now, did you have separate individuals that were responsible for the vehicles and driving it, like motor transport or something of that nature?
Yeah. So every squad has a crew, like a crew team. So you've got your Alpha team, your Bravo team, and then you have your crew. So it's a vehicle commander and a driver.
Okay.
And then, those are the guys that are responsible for the vehicle. That's their baby.
Yeah. They do all the maintenance.
They do all the maintenance. Like everybody kind of helps out, but that's their
that's their bread and butter.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, so you're doing all this training. What are some of the training evolutions as you're getting started?
So being part of an infantry platoon in the Army is very fluid. I started out as a 203 gunner, so I had M4 with the 203 on it,
right.
And then like one day I'd come in and they'd be like, "Hey, now you're the SAW gunner," because our SAW gunner is moving over here. And so then I was a SAW gunner, and then they're like, "Okay, now you're just a rifleman."
Yeah.
So there's a lot. You learn a lot of different kind of specialties inside that infantry platoon, and you're training all the time. If you're not doing something, we would go outside and we take engineer's tape and we build like a little house, an imaginary house with engineer tape. And we go in and we just do battle drill 6, enter a building clear all day until you can do it in your sleep.
Wow.
And then, Fort Lewis, we were lucky because we had a lot of ranges. So we're always at the range. We had like mock-up villages that we would go out and train at.
Nice.
And then things really started to pick up, and we knew like, okay, deployment's coming.
Right.
So we're an hour and a half, 2 hours away from Yakima Training Center in Washington. And we'd go out there twice a year. And we knew as soon as like Yakima training started coming up, like, okay.
Yeah, it's happening.
What's happening?
Yeah.
So we'd go out there for like a month.
Yeah.
And we'd be out in Yakima training.
Wow.
And, out there we've got birds, we've got strikers, we've got mock buildings, we've got ranges. And like we would actually be able to practice with like our forward observers calling in mortar fire and calling in helicopter support and all these different things. So the pieces are starting to come together. And this is, mid 2008.
Okay.
And that was our life for a year, is just training. We knew that it's coming and getting used to being in the Army. And during that time, I got married to a girl that I had known for 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So
smart.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm sure your leadership was very
super
excited.
pumped about that.
Super
pumped about that.
They were like, "This is the best decision you ever made."
Yeah. And I'm like, "Hey, I get to move out of the barracks."
Yeah, absolutely.
So that BAH is coming in. I'm like, "There's no way this can go wrong."
Yeah.
And then she got pregnant.
Well, that happens.
Yeah. So I'm training in my job. And I'm learning how to be a husband and an adult.
Yeah.
And then the baby comes and I'm trying to figure out how to be a dad.
Yeah. You got a lot of firsts.
There's a lot of things happening all at once.
Yeah.
And the thing I realized really, really quickly was that I was not a physical specimen.
Okay.
And I am in a unit with a bunch of guys that are just jacked.
Yeah.
Probably could have played D1 football.
Oh, wow.
70% of the guys in my unit are just freaks of nature.
Yeah. That's wild.
And then you've got me.
Yeah.
Scrawny, skinny. I like to call myself skinny fat.
Skinny fat. Okay.
So I'm like, okay, I'm not a physical specimen. I am not going to be able to keep up with these guys in that way. So I just started relying on other things
Yeah.
to like set myself apart. Like,
Right.
what else am I good at?
Yeah. And that's almost what you have to do everywhere
Yeah.
you go. Whether you do 4 years or you do 30,
Right.
you got to figure out a way to set yourself apart.
Yeah. And so I realized like, okay, I'm a good shot and I'm really good with the vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of where I started transitioning over to. I ended up as a driver on one of the vehicles.
Oh wow!
So
Okay.
then that vehicle became my baby.
Yeah.
And so I was responsible. Me and my VC, we did all the maintenance. We did all the crew serve stuff. Like that vehicle was our baby, and I learned so much about those dang strikers, man.
More than you probably wanted.
More than I ever wanted to know.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And, the whole time that deployment's over and over again.
Yeah.
Wife, kid. And then.
So let me ask you this. As you were preparing, right, everyone has to go in and you do a will and you do all these things, right? And especially for a young guy, for you, I'm married, I got a kid, I got all these things. And all these are all first. And, I got to sign a will, was that a big impactful part for you when you went in to do that?
I think at that point I knew what I was getting into.
Okay.
And so there was like a moment where, as we're leading up to the deployment, you sit down with legal and you do your will and your power of attorney and that stuff. And I'm like, this is happening.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm like 19, 20. And I'm like, okay, I hereby leave all my earthly possessions, which is nothing.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You get nothing.
Yeah. Have fun with my debt.
I like it.
So, it's coming up. And then we kind of 2009 rolls around. And at this point, the deployment's coming up. We already know we're going to Iraq and we're just kind of waiting for orders to drop.
Okay.
And I come home from work one day and my wife comes in and she's like, hey, I'm pregnant again. And so our son's not even 1 year old.
Oh, wow.
My kids are 13 months apart, man.
Yeah. That's him. Oh, it's okay. It's still recording.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. 13 months apart.
I'm 20 years old and I'm like, I've got, at this point, he's like 6 or 8 months old, maybe 6 months old. And I'm like,
that just tells me that you're that good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're very proficient.
I can't be good at everything, but I'm good at a couple things.
You got your shooting, you got your striker, and you can make babies.
I can, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, good news. I'm not shooting blanks.
Yeah.
Bad news.
You're not shooting blanks.
I'm not shooting blanks. And we're stressed because like the deployment is here at this point. Like, we get our orders. We know, okay, this is the date we're getting ready.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to Iraq and I know, okay, now I've got to take care of my family. Like, how do I do this? We've only been married for like a year and a half, maybe.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, what do you do?
Yeah.
And so we finally decided like, okay, we're going to pack everything up out of our house, put a lot of it in storage, and she's going to go stay with her mom. Her mom's going to come up here or something.
Yeah. Now, was she from Washington area?
She was from California originally too.
Okay.
We met in Washington. She was living there.
Gotcha.
And then we deployed, man.
Yeah.
2009, mid 2009, we deployed.
Okay. And where did you go?
I went to Iraq. We were at this FOB called FOB Normandy.
Okay.
Tiny little dumpster fire of a FOB. It's just our battalion.
Oh, wow. So you're out on your own.
We're kind of out on our own, and we're really close to the border with Iran.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're kind of like more mountainy than deserty, like, but the deployment process happens. We do the patching ceremony where we take off our red, white, blue patch, put on the subdued one.
Oh, okay.
And
I didn't realize that was like
it's a thing.
It's an actual ceremony.
So the day that you deploy, everybody comes in early. You load up your sea bags into this truck, and then the whole battalion comes together. You take off your red, white, and blue patch.
Yeah.
You put on your subdued one.
No kidding.
And then as soon as that patch goes on, you say goodbye to your family.
Yeah.
And you're on a bus to the airfield.
Right.
At McCord Air Force Base.
Holy cow. Wow, that's the symbolism of that is incredible.
And that's the whole part of it, right? Is like And I still remember our battalion commander saying like, hey, remember these colors, put that in your pocket because you're not going to see red, white, and blue for a year.
Yeah. Wow.
So
man, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really cool.
They knew psychologically what they were doing, preparing to get. That's good.
So then I go over, kiss the wife goodbye, kiss my son goodbye, who's like 6 months old.
Yeah.
And get on a bus over to McCord Air Force Base, and we're in this big hangar. We're all getting weighed with all of our stuff on and our weapons. They're like, all right, you guys take out all your fingernail clippers and any blades, smaller than this, because we're getting on a civilian aircraft.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And we take that all out. And then we walk in there with our knives and our M4s and our saws and everything.
But you had to take out.
Yeah, we had to take out our fingernail clippers, man.
That makes zero sense whatsoever.
And we catch a flight over to Germany.
Okay.
And we're in Germany. Catch another flight that flies us into Kuwait, and then we're checking into Kuwait, and it's like a 2-week period.
Okay.
Before we go in country, and you're in processing, you do all this paperwork for your hazard pay and your combat pay. You're kind of, I think it's really just to get acclimated.
Yeah. Which is smart. Yeah.
It's very smart, and it is hot.
Yeah. So what month were you getting?
This is in the summer. It's like July or August.
Yeah, it's right in the middle.
It's toasty. Yeah. And so, in Kuwait, I think we were at Camp Buehring. They've got these flags that they fly up every morning, and the color of the flag tells you the temperature.
Yeah.
And so it's like white, blue, red, black.
Yeah.
And anything over black is like 120 degrees. You're not allowed to be outside.
Yeah.
The only time you're allowed to be outside is to go to and from chow or go like to the gym. And everything is tense, man.
Yeah.
And so like we're PTing, we're trying to get acclimated. We're getting all of our gear checked. Our vehicles are going to another base in Iraq at Balad Air Base, Joint Base Balad. Yeah. And so we're waiting on all that stuff. And Kuwait kind of throws you off a little bit.
Yeah.
Because Camp Buehring, there's like a Burger King, there's a Pizza Hut, there's freaking green bean coffee, Subway.
It's almost like you're home.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
And so you're like, oh, this isn't that bad.
Yeah.
This isn't that bad. It's gonna be cake, man.
Yeah.
It's not even that bad. It's hot. And you're talking to your family, they got payphones and stuff, internet cafe. And then it's like, okay, hey, we're getting on another plane. So we get on another plane, take the 30-minute straight up, straight down, fly into Balad. And we get to Balad, and I think we're there for another couple of days. Okay. More acclimation, like getting our vehicles ready and stuff. And Balad is like,
it's huge.
It's huge. Yeah. It's a city. I got a speeding ticket on Balad in a Humvee, and I'm like, what? What? My squad leader's like, are you kidding me? I thought this was kind of like, no, man, 25 miles an hour over, Sergeant. And I'm like, this is stupid. So, it throws you off. And Balad's got huge PX, Bazaar, all this food and stuff. And so you're really just like, man, this is not that bad.
Yeah.
And then one day, our company commander calls us all in, and he's like, hey, the FOB we're going to, they just lost like a whole squad.
Whoa.
They were driving at night, and there was a bridge, and the bridge is really stupid. It's 2 lanes in each direction, but then it narrows down to 1 lane each direction. And I guess one of the vehicles drove right off. And a bunch of the guys got super messed up, man. They lost 2 guys. They had a bunch of injuries. He's like, you guys need to get locked in.
Yeah.
Like all of this stuff you see here, take that and throw it away.
Yeah.
Because you need to be locked in. This is a combat zone, man.
Yeah.
And then
it's like a wake-up call in itself right there.
Then like the next day, he calls us all together again. He's giving us like significant intelligence briefing pretty much. Yeah, and he's like, hey, the unit we're replacing, they just got hit by an EFP, and it was like the battalion sergeant major, his vehicle, and the driver lost both of his legs.
Oh my God.
And at this point, I'm a driver.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, the who what lost what? He's like, yeah, lost both of his legs. The FP cut right through the driver's hatch, took both his legs off. And so that was a real wake up call where I'm,
this is real.
Yeah. And you know, a couple days later, we load up in our trucks and we drive from Balad out to the FOB and FOB Normandy. And you know, the first couple of weeks that you're there, you're doing left seat, right seat rides with the unit that's coming out. And I remember getting to this FOB and I'm like, this is it. This is it.
Where's the Burger King?
Where's the RPX was a closet.
Oh my God.
Like half the size of this room that we're sitting
in.
Yeah. It was literally like a closet attached to and I use the term dining facility very loosely. The DFAC was small. Like we've been eating at the DFAC at Balad where they've got like, oh, hey man, do you guys want like surf and turf? There's steak and lobster in this line, sandwich line in this line.
Yeah.
It's an Air Force base.
Yeah. Hey, living high on the hog.
Living it up. So we get there and it's a culture shock, man. Like small, tiny, and it's humid. And, we're in Diyala province. And I'm like, man, this sucks. This sucks. And so we start doing our thing.
Yeah. You know? And then how big would you say that the FOB you were at? Like, probably not even a mile.
No, not even a mile. Right? No. Like, yeah, you could run the perimeter, and if you ran the whole perimeter, it's like 2.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So it's culture shock, and it's like, okay, here we are. But you know, I was lucky, I guess, in a sense, because our deployment was very chill. At this point in Iraq, we're transitioning over. We're training the Iraqi army. We're training the Iraqi police, and they're really becoming responsible for the security in Iraq. You know, the war's not over, but it's definitely on the down.
Right.
And so we're not going out and getting firefights every day. We're going out and doing patrols every day. And like we would link up with like the Iraqi army or the Iraqi police, or like there was like a local militia that we'd go meet up with, and we'd go and we'd do patrols. But it was a lot of like, we were smiling and waving and talking to people, and really like we're on the second half of the war in Iraq, where it's like we're rebuilding.
More hearts and minds.
Hearts and minds, man. And so it's easy to get complacent when you're doing that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
The first month you're like, you know, but after that, and you're still not getting in firefights, you're like, okay, what's going on? And you know, I'll never forget Thanksgiving in Iraq. We actually did like humanitarian missions. So we're out dropping off food,
no kidding,
rice and beans and tomato paste and all this food, to schools and to, you know, city centers and to mosques and stuff. And we're really,
I mean, that's a huge, like when you look at the training that you're doing, you know, prepping for it, you know, your mindset is not that, you know, and then you get there and you're like, oh man, no firefight. We're patrolling in hearts and minds, and we're giving food out and all this. I mean, the mission totally changed.
And you talk with guys who have been over there before, and it's definitely culture shock for them, because they're like, I was here 14 months ago. And you couldn't step foot outside the FOB without getting blown up or shot at or getting mortared every night or whatever. And it wasn't like that. And so in my mind, I really think that, you know, Al Qaeda and all these different organizations like Jaish al-Mahdi and stuff, they knew. They knew like, hey, the U.S. is pulling out. If we just ride it out.
Makes sense.
They're going to be gone. And so that was really a lot of what it was. It was a lot of hearts and minds, man. We did a big op where we kind of came in and we took over this big city center, and we had doctors and dentists and SF medics and all these different people, and they were coming in, and we opened it up to like everywhere. People would come in to get dental stuff done. We had like a kid who he had his hand blown off by a grenade, and it had been all screwed up, and so he came in and got like plastic surgery done. And like, the SF medics everybody is in there working. Our medics are working. people. And it was really just like, hey, come in and let the US take care of you.
Yeah.
We're the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
We would take like backpacks out to schools and to the girls' school because
Yeah.
girls were going to school for the first time.
Which was huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
And I remember just like how that made me feel, like these are things that we take for granted in the state. Food.
Mm-hmm.
I could walk out of this building and walk to 6 different places where I could get food.
Oh yeah.
That's not the way it was there. School. Everybody goes to school.
Whether you want to or not.
Whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
And so, we're giving out school supplies so these kids can go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And they're freaking excited.
Mm-hmm.
We're going out and we're giving people medical care that in this country is like, I just walk into an urgent care and I get a Band-Aid or whatever and I come back out, but it's not the way it is there, man. Like, so it was like the payoff.
Oh yeah. Which is cool. The cool thing about it is you're seeing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're seeing the after effects of, okay, the military's been there for so long, and now it's starting to be able to do that hearts and mind thing. So you get to see kind of that after effect.
It was really cool. And then we roll into, I think it's like November, and they're having their elections.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep this article pulled up on my phone at all times. Go back and read it. We're doing the elections, and we're like, the U.S. at this point is like, hey, we're pulling back. We don't want any American presence in any of these elections.
Right.
So we were pretty much just QRF for the full day.
Mm-hmm.
And suicide bombs start going off.
Oh, dang.
Outside of the lot, at like the big polling place outside of the lot. And so what had happened is they had suicide bombers that came in and detonated. And then they had secondaries in ambulances. So the ambulances came in, acted like they were picking people up. They were really deep.
Whoa.
And so it's huge. It made national news.
Yeah.
And
that is wild, man.
But even still, they're like, okay, like we're going to go in, but we're not actually going in. We're just going in to support.
Right.
So the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police and all the militias like are going in and cleaning up, and we're just kind of on standby.
Right.
And it sucked.
Yeah.
Because it's like being the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
And you're watching the star quarterback and he goes down and the coach comes up to you. He's like, put your helmet on. You're going in. And then your star quarterback is like, well, I'm just going to tough it out. And you're like,
you throw your helmet down. You're like,
come on, man. Come on.
Let me in.
So that happens in November. And then December, I go home on my mentor leave.
Okay.
Because my son's getting ready to be born.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I go home. I'm home for Christmas. See my wife. Get to watch my youngest son be born.
Nice.
And I'm home for 2 weeks, and then I come back, and it's just enough time to almost get used to being normal again, and then you come back, and I'll never forget, man. Like probably one of the reasons why I'm not married now.
Yeah.
I come back home and my wife is having our son.
Yeah.
And I am sitting on the couch, zoned out.
Yeah.
I couldn't be there because I was still over there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like to this day, if you were to ask her about it, she'd be like, yeah, man, like he was sitting on the couch and I'm over there pushing and the doctors and the nurses are looking at him.
Like, are you going
to help, bro? And I'm just like sitting there like watching. But my mind was not there.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It sucks. Horrible move on my part.
Yeah. But, to a certain extent, that's going to be a normal occurrence. When you're that in a combat zone and you're focused that much all the time, and then all of a sudden you're back and you just kind of zone out.
Yeah.
So I get it.
And I remember coming home, flying into Seattle, and my wife and her mom and my son come pick me up. And I climb into the back seat and I'm sitting next to my son in his car seat. He looks at me and starts screaming bloody murder.
Yeah.
He had no idea who I was.
Yeah.
And he's a year old at this point. And that hurt.
Oh, yeah.
That hit me hard, man. My son does not want anything to do with me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tough, man.
It was brutal.
That whole aspect that people don't really think about, you know, unless you're in that position, you know. That's one thing I wish everybody, especially the civilian, you know, as they're listening and stuff like that. Like that's a tough thing, you know. And you guys, the Army's deployed for a year at a time. Yeah, it's not like the Marines. They do 7-month bumps and then they go back.
So that was something I had to get used to. And so I'm home. We do Christmas. We do all this stuff, and I leave on New Year's Eve to go back to Iraq.
Yeah.
So I go back home. I go back to Iraq, fly to Ireland, and I didn't understand. Again, I'm young. It was my first time out of the country. I didn't understand exchange rates.
Yeah.
So I'm like in Ireland, and I'm there overnight. And I'm like, I'm gonna get some goodies and stuff.
Yeah.
And I go shopping, and then I call my wife, and I'm like, hey, I'm in Ireland. She's like, yeah, I know you just spent $500. I'm like, no, I didn't. I spent like $200. And she's like, no, you spent $500. I didn't understand. And the price of everything is in euros.
Yeah.
And
holy cow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure she was extremely
She was
happy.
super pumped about that. Yeah. Go to Ireland, go back to Kuwait. And I'm sitting in Kuwait. I'm there for like 2 weeks waiting for transport to be able to take me back into Iraq. Get to Iraq. I'm there for another like 4 days.
Yeah.
Get back to my fob and get to my unit, and they're on QRF.
Okay.
So for the listeners, QRF, you're kind of just on standby.
Right. Yeah.
For us, it was kind of like a down day because you're not out on a mission, but you can't really do anything because you have to be ready to go in like 30 minutes.
Right.
And so we get back, and like I have to go to the armory, get my weapon. I'm putting my kit back together and everything. And I hear the radio go off, and I'm just snapping the last pouch on my kit. And they're like, yeah, an Iraqi police officer got hit by a V-bid. We need to go out. And so it's my first day back in the country. We go out there, we pull into the village, and it's, the Iraqi army, little Toyota Hilux.
Yeah.
Pieces of this poor Iraqi police officer all over the place. And I'm like, welcome back.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah. So in the span of 2 weeks, I went from like playing with my newborn and my 1-year-old to picking up body parts in the street.
Yeah. But that's a culture shock too.
Yeah.
And to be able to go back and forth so quickly, mentally speaking, how's that messing with you?
It's tough, man.
Yeah.
You see this even in the civilian sector where it's like there's different parts of your brain. And your brain, different parts of your brain are geared to do different things.
Yeah.
The part of our brain that's more creative is different than the part that's analytical, and that's different from the part we use to drive, talk, or whatever. So you're shifting between all these gears.
Yeah.
But they're so drastic. You're drastically shifting between, okay, I'm a dad, I'm not in danger, I'm playing with my kids, I'm talking with my wife, to, okay, now we're back. And honestly, it sounds really screwed up, but that was probably the best thing to have happen on day one because it's like hard stop. You are back in the game.
Yeah.
Don't get complacent. Complacency kills. Don't be complacent because it's still, even though Iraq is on the upswing, this is still a combat zone.
Right. Yeah.
And anything can happen at any time. All it takes is for one Jay Shaw Mahdi guy to say like, hey, I feel froggy today.
Yeah.
Or like, you know what? My wife pissed me off. I'm going to cash in on those 72 virgins.
Yeah. It could happen just like that. Too.
Yeah. And it does.
Drop of the hat.
It does all the time. And so, I'm getting back into the swing of things, and we're going on missions and stuff. And one of the things that was part of our responsibilities is we provide security for like supply runs. So supply runs would, go from Bob Warhorse, which was like the big, it's like Balad and Warhorse and then our little Bob. So we would do that, twice a month or 3 times a month. We would provide security. And we're coming back one. And I was in the gunner seat of one of our vehicles. And we had like the RWS, like it's all camera operated. So it's like playing a video game for your 50 cal.
Okay.
You've got a joystick and it's got night vision cameras and everything, and it moves the 50 cal. So you really don't have to be outside of the vehicle if you don't want to. And we did it because, guys were getting hit by IEDs and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So, I'm sitting there on the joystick, scanning, doing all this stuff. And, we're dozing. It's late. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And there's a Humvee in front of us. And I hear a boom and I see light. And I'm like, man, what was that? And it didn't click immediately.
Yeah.
And then I start smelling gunpowder. And I'm like, oh. And I hear the radio call up like, hey, the Humvee in front of us got hit by an ID.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And we're like, okay, the first things you start doing is you're like, what are we going to do? Is there damage to the vehicle? Can we push through? Do we have to stop? What are we doing? So they're like, hey, we're just going to push through. We're like 20 minutes from the fob at this point.
Oh, wow.
So we're like, we're just going to push through. We're going to gun it back. And so that's what we did. We just gunned it back. And we get back. Everybody's good. They take like statements from everybody.
Right.
And the next day, EOD goes out and they look at it and they're like, yeah, it was like smaller ID, homemade explosives with like ball bearings, shrapnel.
So the Humvee was able to drive back?
Yeah, Humvee was able to drive back. In fact, I think what we found out later was they weren't even trying to get us. They were trying to get the mayor of the village, who was supposed to be going down that same road.
Oh, no.
Later. So he would have been in like a soft shell vehicle.
Yeah. For everybody out there, if you're struggling, you need help, don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can go to, or you can text 838-255. You can also go to veteranscrisisline.net, click on that chat icon. Any of those options are going to be able to put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. Remember, one veteran life loss is one too many. I care about you. Brandon cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, you're doing well, don't forget your buddies that you serve with. Reach out to them, ask them how they're doing it. If they need a helping hand, help them out. All right, man. With that, this is going to end it up.
All right.
So thanks for doing this. It was great having you on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. It was fun. To all the listeners, stay motivated. Change your socks.